if Matt Pat was writing the story, it would be very different than what Cawthon wrote.
We were going to take a deep dive into that lore video that he did that was like an hour plus long. And I was like, look, I kind of Five Nights at Freddy's out at the moment. Like,
Yeah,
we can
that's
get into
respectable.
and then you sent me the 8.5 hour one. I was like, no. No, let's watch something else right now. We'll get into that after. Gen Wars.
Hello and welcome to Gen Wars here on Funky Games. We're going to be talking about Five Nights at Freddy's, the movie that just came out. And I have my Gen X representative, the scum that he is. Old Nick's here. How you doing, Nick?
Good, how are you?
Oh, I'm hanging in. I'm ready for a fight. I'm ready for a battle of generational differences, and that's what we do here on the podcast.
I have a feeling it might not be as much of a fight as you think it's going to be, but
that's good. Excellent. Excellent. Yeah. So I've been doing my research. I'm coming in here. And Five Nights at Freddy's is a movie that just recently came out. It did a dual release on theaters and Peacock streaming platform, which I thought was a fantastic gamble that paid off for them.
Absolutely.
You ended up watching it on Peacock as well, correct?
Yes. Yeah, it just was easier to watch it at home than try to run out to the theater to go see a movie that I really have no business seeing, I guess. Like, I have no... We'll start off saying I know about this much of Five Nights at Freddy's. Like, I worked at a YouTube channel for a little bit, so I was exposed to a tiny bit of the lore, and I have we'll call it the most basic knowledge of the franchise you could venture into before watching something like this.
Perfect. And I'm like a big try-hard fan. Like I've played, I think, most, if not all, of the games. Not beating them all, of course, because that's my MO, is to like start games and not be able to complete them.
What?
But
You don't say.
Absorbed like all the lore. I sent after Nick finished the movie, he was like, "This is my take," and I was like, "Oh, okay." Here, I'm watching this 8-hour long lore breakdown video if you want to watch that.
I clicked on it not realizing you weren't kidding. It was 8 hours long, and I went, okay, we're going to stop that. We'll deal with that later.
Yeah, it's one of the things, a lot of like the YouTuber genre that is like the indie horror, that became my sleepy time regimen.
Okay.
was watching Markiplier and Jacksepticeye and all them do scary games. So like it's a ton of stuff. So when I started like really working the 9 to 5 grind, I always had that stuff on the background while I was working. So I can burn through tons of videos like that.
You've
Deep
been
things with deep
absorbing
lores. Yeah.
kind of in the background as it goes.
Absolutely. Kind of like how people do the Dark Souls lore and stuff like that.
I've sat there and worked 8-hour days just watching someone run through a game that I've run through numerous times myself. So I get it. I totally get it.
Speaking of getting it, this is where you like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. You need to go down there and hit that button. It did the whole animation thing because you're not subscribed. If you were subscribed, you wouldn't have done that and you wouldn't have been bothered. So that's why you got to go click on the scribble
And
button
it does little
down there.
like things.
Yeah, it's
when
all
you,
happy
when you
and
click
grand.
it.
So go do that, and you can go get stuff at the Funky Store, funky.store. It's there. There's merch there. I'm going to grab that stuff. Do you want to order it now before we get into this conversation? You'll be way too distracted by what we're talking about.
Coming up on Grimace time?
Grimace time.
Yes.
It is. It's almost Grimace time, which is very different from Christmas time, but it's kind of like it. It's just when the Grimace comes down your chimney and gives you
Oh, no.
McDonald's shakes.
That's a horrible prospect. I don't know if I want to be involved in Grimace time.
Oh, there's always time for Grimace time. So, what we're going to do is Nick's going to give his opinion of the movie. I think my opinion is known, but I'll give it already and kind of break down some of the points and then go into like the critical reception and how like objectively successful this movie was. So, go. Tell us. What did you think?
So, based on my minuscule knowledge of this movie and coming into it very objectively, coming into it as someone who loves movies, someone who's watching this with little to no. This is like watching, let's say Jurassic Park without having ever read the book or anything of that nature, where you don't know the source material, you're just going in blind. They did a great job. I think I know I'm going to get hate for that one, but I think they did a really good job keeping it engaging, keeping it scary. I know, like, I was obviously watching with my girlfriend who has a deep knowledge of the lore because she watched Markiplier and Jacksepticeye, like yourself, and Matt Pat and all them play it. So it didn't adhere to the lore that it was. And my take on that was, yes, they could have added more of the camera aspect, the camera looking through the video monitors element, to bring that scary jump scare kind of thing going on. That was my biggest criticism. They could have used that a little more, but I understand why they kind of used it lightly and moved on from it, because you're gonna an hour and a half movie can't be all in video cameras.
Correct, and I think they could have like homaged it a little bit better.
I definitely agree with you there. Knowing now where it came from and how this game or this movie came to be and what it came from, they definitely could have added more of that in there. But all in all, I think the story was well told. The characters had not just stakes for themselves. There was outside influence stake or greater stakes than just themselves and survival. There is one thing I will talk about later that I wanted to bring up that was just kind of like, well, whatever, sure, that's went by. But I really enjoyed it. I went in expecting nothing, or I went in had low expectations, and I came out being like, all right, that actually wasn't too bad. I really enjoyed this, and I'm kind of intrigued to see where this goes from here.
And that's my nutshell feeling as well. Is like it was a great movie. I thought it was great, just like an objective movie.
Yeah.
And we're gonna go into spoiler territory. So like, if you haven't seen the movie, go watch it. It's free on Peacock. What are you doing? Just go do that. Go check that out. They stuck again. This was made by Cawthon. Like he's the person that made the game. He made the movie. So to say that like they did stick to the lore is kind of a interesting argument, especially as much as he rewrites and changes the lore. And the lore is all basically interpreted from I would say almost exclusively Matt Pat.
Okay.
And he has changed his theories. He's changed how the lore is interpreted several times.
Okay, I didn't.
So it's hard to say like, oh, it's not. It's if Matt Pat was writing the story, it would be very different than what Cawthon wrote.
We were going to take a deep dive into that lore video that he did that was like an hour plus long, and I was like, look, I kind of Five Nights at Freddy's out at the moment. Like,
yeah,
we can get into and then you sent me the 8.5 hour one. I was like, no, let's watch something else right now. We'll get into that after. So at some point, probably before the next movie, I will dive in to see kind of where it came from and how we got to where we are now. And based on my girlfriend's opinions on everything, and she was constantly like, that's not how it happened. That's not how it, and I get it. Like,
yeah,
my favorite things that have been adapted into a movie, I'm like, that's not how it happened. It still doesn't take away from the game and the books and all the stuff that came from it. Like, It's still there. You can still go watch it.
And my thing is, it's not interpreting the game, because the gameplay doesn't have like definitive lore. It has interpretive lore that you can interpret different things.
There's not specific like this is the things as they are. It's like they're left ambiguous.
Sometimes, yeah. Okay. So like, is one of the grievances that Mike Schmidt isn't Afton's son? Okay. Is that one of the possible grievances?
No.
Okay. Well, give me.
It was more so like we don't even find out about Afton until Game 4, and I was like, well, look, they're putting out a movie that could tank you get you get one bite at that apple, and if you don't give us something to work with, oh, the animatronics are killing kids, and then we're done. Okay, and then everyone hates it. Like, you're gonna be like, well, there's more to it, and then like, well, we're not making any more kids because we screwed it up. And
Right.
so yes, they had to bring in the big bad and give it to us now, and as far based on the stuff that I have watched, they're already talking about where those things are going to go, and we're going to get some
Correct.
of those backstories and so on and so forth. So it's
3 movies are signed.
okay.
So we get 2 more for
Okay.
sure.
All right, yeah, and I could like,
And they're going to make them. Did you see what it's already made in like
it's
total?
a lot of money. I don't.
So $25 million budget,
Yeah.
$217 million so far.
Jeez.
And
That's
they had
crazy.
gone on record and said that they already made the money back with the streaming rights.
I mean, they, like you said, they took a gamble and they won. Like, that was
I don't even
perfect
think it was.
gamble.
I think when you have the game creator spearheading it and he knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
Because he's already written books. He's already made a video game.
Yep.
Matt Pat said that he was really good on set
Yep.
as far as like direction and making sure
I
everything
did
was
watch
good.
that Matt Pat video. I made sure
Yeah.
not to watch it until after I watched the movie,
Right, yeah, for sure,
just
sure.
in case he dropped anything.
Yes, well, he did his whole
Yeah.
cameo, but which was great and fantastic. But this, I think, is a great video game adaptation. Like and we can go into some of them, but looking at the critical reviews, like these aren't even like good reviews. Like, it's flawed. Okay, can we go into some of that? Like, what are the flaws
What is
with
the
that?
flaws?
And
Yeah.
right, and so it's. Oh, I'm trying to look, but it was like it's just fan service. But then like our biggest grievance with it was like, oh, there wasn't enough fan service. So
Yeah. Yes. And I think with the guy who wrote it, the guy who created it was part of creating this, which
oh yeah,
in my eyes makes that more okay. Makes that he said, I'm willing to change, adapt, whatever that is, to meet a film narrative, because this was my point. You can't have I was discussing this with my girlfriend. You can't have an hour and a half long movie with someone just poking around on the security cameras. That is going to be the most boring movie. Granted, their scenes in movies can be tense and amazing. Aliens, when they're sitting there watching the little HUD monitor as the aliens are starting to swarm and close in on them, and they're just counting down the numbers. One of the most tense scenes of cinema history, looking at a video screen. Like, it's perfect. They could have added a little bit more in with this, and I would have
And I
enjoyed
think they
that. That would
will.
have been cool.
and I think that's the main like legitimate criticism, is that like take what made the game scary
Yeah.
and bring that into the cinema format. And I think there's a lot of ways to tackle that, and I hope if any feedback is taken from like the discourse, and Scott is a decent guy of like actually taking in like there's a running thing that like the next game that he makes directly addresses like the big criticism that he got from the previous game, and that's why there was so many like kind
The
of
next game in this series, in the FNAF series, or just
and yeah,
Okay.
just in general. So like when he made FNAF 2, he did XYZ. That was the big grievance of the time from the first one. When he made the third one, it was like directly addressing what the problems were.
okay.
So that's might be what he does with the movies. Like, oh, you wanted more fan service, or you wanted to be scarier? Like, maybe we can get away with bumping it up to an R rating. I think it's really hard.
That was my exact sentiment. I said, this one's PG-13. Take it one step further. Go full R with it. We left the movie on the toys are out of the closet, or the attic now. You know, like, they're on their own. They're no longer, well, at least seemingly under control.
Right.
They are sentient now, and we could take that into innumerable territories, like, and it could be so fun and exciting. But I do like the fact that they kept them. They were there, but when they were there, when they were nice, they kept them like Jaws. We know there's a shark in the water, but we're not really going to see him, and we'll catch that one moment and he's out. And I also think that it would have hurt if this movie was jump scare central. I think this would have. It would have been okay. Come on, let's go. Move on. We don't need jump scare.
If you want that, play
go.
the game. And so that's something else that I was like, people wanted to taste the video game through the movie.
You're not gonna do
and
that.
it's not the same experience.
No.
Like I saw like a TikTok where it was just like the FNAF movie and it's them building the fort, and then it's like how people wanted the FNAF movie, and it's just like a sped up gif of somebody like freaking out of the it's like
she didn't like that, the fort thing. She was like, "What is this?" And I was like, "Look,
it's a great scene."
I thought it worked so well. It was like we're endearing ourselves to the animatronics. We're endearing ourselves to the characters, and everybody's playing nicely until it goes wrong, until it's not, and they don't know that, they're like, oh, these things are just what they, these things are these animatronics. They're just Chuck E. Cheese, and like they're supposed to be nice.
Well, and I think that was a big point of like when you're approaching a different media, like video versus video game, a movie, you get a chance to humanize the mechanical ones that aren't given that kind of humanization directly in the games. They're done through back end like mini games and lore and stuff, and it. But this is the first time that you're getting like a lot of the screen presence of like these original kids. That just being kids.
That was nice. Like I was like, oh, they're actually like, hey, here's the kids that are in these things. I thought that was kind of. I mean, obviously, only the Golden Freddy kid was the only one that talked. I think everyone was just running from him the whole time. But like, we actually got to have they were bringing something to the table, not just the animatronics.
Yeah, and that's something that I've kind of like changed my opinion in through doing Gen Wars with you, is like in Transformers you have to have the human characters to get the humanization across and the cares, and like that's kind of how I would like to see that role spent, is like, okay, we got to make people care about like these kids were killed like at like 8 years old, so these animatronics have to function as if they are 8 years old.
Absolutely.
And what 8-year-old's not going to want, like what 30-year-old's not going to want to build a pillow fort in the middle of a Chuck E. Cheese? Like, come on.
Yeah, absolutely.
I thought it was hilarious. Like,
well, and we also had the stakes of him having a sister, because we could have just had Mike, and it would have been like, oh, there's these weird, and it would have just kind of fallen flat. I don't think it would have given any gravity and weight to the. Oh, she's relating to these things because there's actually children in them. And now that when they turn and they're like, no, one of us, it's like, oh no, we've just taken those stakes of survival up to, no, you have to now your survival as well as this child's survival.
And
I thought that was a great addition to it. And because there's no others in the games. There's nobody else but your perspective, right? You're
right.
Okay.
There's like these Atari. Fun fact.
Yes.
So FNAF has like basically 2 game modes in the original few games, where you have mini games that you play through on death, and they're Atari style games.
Okay.
The owner or founder, I can't remember his exact title, of Atari made Chuck E. Cheese with the Atari money. That's why he tied them together in this franchise.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't know that till recently. I thought it was just like a gimmicky like aesthetic choice, but I was like, oh no, that's pretty cool. That's why you chose Atari games, because it's the same guy that made Chuck E. Cheese, which you're doing here. So I thought that was a fun little touch. But that's where a majority of this lore comes from, is playing Atari, like E.T. graphic level Atari game, right? So
no, we're not playing this one on your channel. I'm not playing E.T.
E.T. the perfect game for the Atari. You get the new Atari console that's coming out.
Oh yeah. I saw that thing.
But
Uh,
I think they did such a good job of putting the lore in a more compact, more stable, realistic timeline. And like one of the main things is like, why does the security guard keep coming back after he's almost clapped by these animatronics? He's like, well, this he has to, and he's not really encountering anything too bad until it pops off. It just makes more logical sense when you're watching it as a viewer.
yeah, and he needs money because the aunt is trying to take the kid away, and you know they're trying to break up the family unit, which is good segue. What happened to the aunt? She's
dead.
She got
She heckin'
murdered,
dead.
but everything was just like, all right, this is what I wanted to bring up. Like, murdered on the floor. She's sleeping. And we moved on from it. And then the end of the movie, they're just like, ha ha, let's have some spaghetti and meatballs. And you're like, is she dead in the other room?
Oh, still, yes.
Did we call the police? Did we call the coroner? I don't know. Did anyone happen to... No one got questioned about this?
Nah, it was the year 2000. Who had to ask questions then?
Just
And that's another
buried her
thing.
out back.
It takes the time different from the game because I believe the games happen in like early 90s, late 80s, a majority of them, and then the lore is older than that. But I believe the original Mike Schmidt was working in the 80s at the restaurant, so they kind of time jumped it closer to our timeline as well. I don't know the exact intent of that, but
I know
it's
the
a very
original
intentional
bite was
choice.
the bite of 83.
Bite of
might be
83
right.
is, yeah. That was
I
the
might be
Fazbear
right or
Family
wrong,
Diner. Yeah, that was like the first kill or something like that.
Yes.
And I think they're also trying to set up where Garrett is like the first kill or something like that.
Wait, who was the first kill?
His brother, Garrett, when he was kidnapped out of Nebraska.
Oh, okay. I don't, you know, so myself coming into this, I have no basis of anything. So being able to take all of that and boil it down, and again, modify some things because you have an hour and a half to work with, or whatever, there were 2 hours at most. Boiling it down
it's like an hour
to
40.
and modifying stuff to be able to thread this story, I think worked very well. To add his little brother being abducted, and he's trying to figure it out, and being able to talk to these. I mean, he's essentially like lucid dreaming to some extent, and being able to talk, trying to find his little brother, but being able to use these children as the like conduit to like help find him or help find out where he went to.
Yeah, and the fact that they were all killed by the same guy, so that's why like he would have this connection and be able to do that, not just get destroyed.
And they could have
on
easily
his
like
first-
left that all out, because I probably would have disliked the movie even more. I will say, I also, and if you didn't see this earlier, I think it came out last year, 2 years ago, Wild Willy's Wonderland, the
I have
Nick
not
Cage
seen
movie.
it, but I've seen a lot of it. Yeah,
It is. Well, so I didn't know this was being made, but it's the same movie. It's the FNAF story without all the rigmarole, all the backstory, and all the. It's just Nick Cage. He's not a security guard. He's there to clean up the place, and the things go wild. the animatronics come to life, and he ain't having it. And it is absolutely a fantastic romp. I know I'm deviating onto this, but if you have a chance, Willy's Wonderland, go check it out. It's this story minus all the extra. Just Nick Cage and animatronics, and shenanigans ensues.
and I think that's kind of part of the discourse, especially. I don't know how that was critically received. I'm assuming it was pretty middling.
Probably.
Like,
It
let's
came
say
out kind of like
50s.
it came just kind of showed up and was like, oh, by the way, here's this movie. And
Well, they were trying to. They saw that the FNAF was in development hell because it took
long
5-8 years.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
to
was
like
gonna say, it took-
start-
from what
they
I-
shot it in a year, so they were juggling it around for a while.
they built the whole set inside of a Home Depot,
Yes,
which is I was very impressed. That was pretty awesome.
To me, it just goes to show like the right allocation of budget to quality, like it just makes like the Disney stuff look like doo doo, and it just like all the people that want to make a legitimately good film, because the film looked great. I don't think anybody's going to question.
Yeah, no, it looked
like
fantastic. It was
like
well shot, well lit, well all like it had all
all
the trappings
practical,
of
which
a
are
good.
supposed to be like more expensive than CGI. I just don't.
Yeah, and I'm glad that they didn't go CGI with those suits. Whether I don't know how animatronic they were or if there's people in them.
There's two. I think there's two sets of the anima. There's an actual animatronic set, and then there's the costume set, and they used both.
Okay, they were A, seamless, and B, they looked fantastic. Like that's what you want in a horror movie with a thing, with a monster. Something
Yes.
that you know that he could walk up and touch and the fur would push in and you go, oh, that's really real. That's a thing that is there with him. And Henson Company crushed it as usual. Like they looked absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
just the subtle the subtle eye movement there, because all their servoed eyes, just like obviously they only had so much expression with how they could move, but when
That's supposed
those
to be how creepy. Like,
yeah,
the
and
lack
just
of
those
expression is
eye
supposed to not
servos
help.
just slowly slowly close, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, he's mad. Oh no, run. It was
Yes.
perfect.
Yeah.
It was
I
so
love
good.
it. The movie is really held back by its PG-13, but to really get the fan base, and they got it, you had to hit that mark. I don't think you could push the first entry as an R-rated and gotten these results. I don't think it would have happened.
Because even if your audience is still young at that point, the next movie, which will be at least 2 years out, they've hopefully hit that point where they maybe could conceivably see the R-rated movie.
Right.
The younger audience, but like the audience that grew up with it is already beyond that. But I don't feel that the PG-13 necessarily harmed it.
Okay.
They leaned into the trappings of the horror movie, or not the trappings, I guess, but they leaned into the stuff where you're like, oh, this is going to end poorly, and we did the cutaway. And I was like, okay, I know that man's face is shredded by the Freddy mask. And even like,
yeah.
hey, we show him biting the lady in half, and her lower half falls in silhouette. I'm okay with that. I'm totally like, you sold the death. I didn't need to see Saw level of blood gushing and flying out, at least right now. I mean, if we want to go that route later on, sure, but I didn't necessarily need it for this.
For sure. And I think the movie is way more graphic than anything you get in the games, more or less.
Yeah,
Because the
far
game
as I know.
stops like once they leap into frame and stuff. So like you don't
is
see
that
like
just
any
jump
kill-
scare and
yeah.
that's it?
Yeah, and then
Oh,
you get a, like you might get I think you get like a red screen or whatever. Like that's like the grody-ness. I do think there is a level of like fear intensity that you're allowed in PG-13. I don't know if
to
that's true or
ramp
not.
that up. Yeah.
Right. So whatever gets like if people are giving the honest criticism of like it could have been scary or I needed more thriller fear out of it.
Yeah.
Now that you laid down the foundation, this might be a sequel where it could be better than the first.
Yeah.
I think you have all the opportunity to do so.
That was my comment at the end. I was like, we could take I'm not even part of this. They could take this and ramp it up and make it that really intense. Like we left those not necessarily the human characters, but the animatronics in a place where they were on murder now. Their eyes went full red and they were just like, we're going for the gusto. We're going to kill everybody. We're taking all the children, all the adults. We're going I'm like, yeah, you could take that into a place where, ramp it up to Aliens level. We had Alien, which was a sci-fi horror movie, and it was scary and things were lurking in the shadows like this movie. And then Aliens was full-bore aliens running at you, just
right.
blood and guts. And you're like, yep, we could totally go this route if they decided to.
Yeah.
And I'd be very happy with that too.
Yeah, because there's only like a couple of like super graphic scenes in Alien to merit like the R rating as well. So
Yeah,
that's
but it was that what
like
you were
there's
saying
that
is
threshold.
that horror where you're ramping up that tense. We're building up the tension, waiting for the thing to happen.
And if they go the route that I hope they do based on like game content availability, if they go with the full Afton setup, the current state of the lore is like the Springtrap suit and the broken animatronics, or just the Springtrap suit is picked up by like a Spirit Halloween, like the darkness scare house thing, and they put him in there, and then the security guard is just like it's a 1v1 with Springtrap. That might
Okay.
really fit well in a condensed hour 40 movie where it's just kind of like there's a smaller cast to deal with, there's a little bit more focus on that intensity and being afraid and being trapped, and then you might be able to get that experience where it's like, oh, a security guard locked with this
Okay, I could see that.
undying serial killer for an hour and a half. That might be worth watching.
I figure we were probably going to get a little more of his backstory too, since we didn't get a ton of it. We got it in all in exposition,
Right.
and in the which I
that's
didn't.
how we've always gotten the lore, so that's like
Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, in the opening credits, you have like it shows you a lot of the things, so we get it in what the game gave you, but I'm hoping that we even maybe get some let Matthew Lillard fly. Like, the man's got some chops.
Yeah.
Like, let him
I
go.
rewatched Scream. I'm just like, oh.
I mean, he is a little older at this point, so we'd have
But
to
he fits that role then.
do what?
He fits that role of Afton. Afton wasn't like a young gun by any means.
Oh, but I mean, so we're talking what? It's at least 20 years prior.
Yeah, you got
not
to de-age
more.
it by 20 years.
Yeah.
If they keep that timeline, like, so it's not that timeline. So if Garrett, quote unquote, is the first kill, how old was Mike when that happened? Let's say he was 12.
Yeah.
And he's 25 now or whatever. So it's really only like 15 year that we're working with. You
Okay.
you shave Lillard, he's 15 years younger.
True.
Put him in some heavy makeup,
You
whatever.
shave him.
Yeah, I liked how he looked.
Yeah,
like
no, he
with
looked
the
great.
scraggly. Yeah, it was the perfect like. I'm stuck in the 80s.
Yes.
In 2000, working this desk job. Like, I was like, that's perfect. So what do you give it out of rating?
What is our rating?
Let's say
system
110.
here?
110.
I'd give it a solid 7, 7 and a
that's high.
half. Yeah, like I definitely. Again, I'm not disappointed that I spent an hour and a half watching it.
And I think that's great. And I think that's what's really, if I have, so I would probably put it at the 7 or 8 mark as well.
Yeah. Yep.
But because I have the fandom behind that, like, desire, I think it's also interesting to rank it within the current video game movies. So I would say Sonic 1 and 2.
I'd say it's
Detective
way up
Pikachu
there
Mario.
only because
Yeah, I think it's just right below the Mario movie. I think it was better than the 2 Sonic films.
Okay, so I still haven't seen the Mario movie yet. I gotta watch that.
Could you get your life together?
I
First of
know.
all?
Yes. I gotta get.
I think if you enjoyed FNAF, you'll definitely enjoy the Mario movie. 'Cause
I figured
it's
would.
the same cloth as far as like telling a concise, compact story with dumping a lot of stuff on you, but with as much fan service, if not more. I think Mario movie had more fan service in it.
Okay. I kind of figured it would, and this was. I referenced the original Mario movie from 90 whatever 90s in the 90s that because we just watched it recently, and it was again, this was something that obviously I grew up playing Mario Brothers, and then they made a movie out of it, and I went, what is this? This has nothing to do with Mario, and this is all dumb. Now watching it, fast forward and watching it now, I'm like, oh, okay, I see what they did, and I actually don't hate it now. I don't, not that I hated it then, but it wasn't a guy running around on a flat plane bonking his head on bricks and collecting coins, but all of the Mario lore was there. It was all there. I just didn't see it at the time. I was blinded by my anger and frustration that it wasn't what I knew it to be. And I think I think that's going to happen, might happen with the people who don't dislike this movie currently. They're going to look back on it years later and go, okay, I don't hate this. I see what they were doing. I see how, and again, this doesn't take away from the source material. If anything, it just builds on it and gives you, we'll call it a different timeline. I was watching New Rockstars, and he's like, it's not necessarily the same air quote timeline, but we have a deviation with a different most of the same stuff, just remixed a little bit. And that's how you were going to bring me in as an older audience member or someone who's never watched or played the games before. Like, that's, I wasn't planning on watching this movie. I was planning on potentially watching it as a haha, only because I watched Willy's Wonderland, and I was like, yo, that movie ruled. that movie was great and fun and nonsensical. That's my FNAF movie. Nick Cage not having one lick of dialogue and kicking a bunch of animatronics and ripping them apart. Like, I thought that was fantastic. So I was never going to see this movie, but I'm glad that I did, because they were able to take like that whole huge 14 games and like books, and
That's a lot.
Yeah, like there's a lot.
Well, there's like if you're including all the current media, there's a lot.
Yeah, and so. That and all the Matt Pat's lore in your 8 hour, like all of that to condense that down into a package that I could easily sit at my house and go, nom nom nom. Okay, I like that. That wasn't bad.
No, that was good. That was a good meal. I got my money's worth out of that.
Exactly.
For sure. And it's profitable. Like, everybody's got to be like, we did a good job. That was great. I just don't get. I need to look more into specifically Rotten Tomatoes, because no matter how much we meme on Rotten Tomatoes, it's still like the review source.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think there's a real competitor. I guess IMDb, kind of, but it definitely has gone up.
It's up at 30 now.
Score,
it was down at like 20 something.
Yeah, barely 20. So I think, and the same thing with basically every video game movie, I think.
I mean, that we're like just getting to the video game movie adaptation of it all. That's a really hard bar to jump over. And I don't want to say it's high. It's just a hard bar to jump over, or to take all of that material, whether it's a 5-hour, 10, 30-hour game, and compact it down into something that you can easily consume quickly. And we were talking about this. Last of Us did a fantastic job of taking a video game and adapting it to a movie or a show.
Yeah.
I think if it went to a movie, it would have been a little less, it wouldn't have worked as well. The show element of it gave us the ability to tell that longer story. They didn't deviate too much from what the source material was, but the other thing that they had working for it was it's a zombie show. We have Walking Dead, Fear the Walking Dead, The World Is Not Enough, or whatever that other one was called. And they're all 6, 8, 12, 15 seasons deep. We already have this basis of people versus zombies. These zombies just came from mushrooms. Okay. We still but we have that easily adaptable situation.
Right, groundwork.
Mortal Kombat was one of the first video game adaptations that I ever, I guess, was that ever? At least
I don't know about
in
that,
my generation, and
more
that was
higher
like
profile.
I mean, I guess it was probably at that point. But yeah, like I was like, this is the best video game adaptation. Going back and watching it now, I'm like, all right, actually, it's not bad. But that was like the benchmark for a long time, and nothing hit it.
No.
Then Street Fighter, and you're like, what was that? That's awful.
Yeah, I don't think anything hit it until
down
Detective Pikachu, in my mind.
Say that again?
I think Detective Pikachu is what kicked off what we're seeing.
And there was
with the
another
video game
great one. Again, I don't play Pokemon games. I am a Pokemon noob at best. Anything that I've known about Pokemon comes from you and my nephew. Like, so I don't know, but they were able to bring me into that world and open my eyes to something, and I thought it was really well done.
Yep.
I'm assuming they're making more of those, but
Yes, I believe there is a second one coming out. They just released the second game.
Okay.
So, like, they're basically developing them in tandem, I guess.
Okay. Right. I mean, hey, I'm here for it. I enjoyed the last one, so I'm ready to jump into more of the Pokemon world that I have no basis being involved in. Like, those kind of card games came after my time.
I don't know if this is true. I've heard it is that for Detective Pikachu, they were originally going to have Robin Williams be in it as Professor Oak, and so they like changed when he died. Like they changed everything because they're like, we really don't envision anyone else playing that character in live action. So I always thought that was like, okay, like when you have the people that do care about the source material or the franchise like really working on it, that's the sauce. That's the secret sauce that we need.
You need that. You need to have those people being involved that created the source material, and we know Hollywood doesn't like to do that. They grab the IP and they go, "Thank you very much," and shut the door. And then you get garbage coming out of it, or you get something that doesn't look and feel and do anything that actual video game was. And that served well for this. They brought the guy and they said, let's make a movie. And he was able to, again, craft a different story, a similar story, but craft something akin to what you experienced or what was experienced in the game and put it on the screen.
Yeah. And it's a great movie. I'm super excited with what happened with FNAF. I'm ready for the other two movies. They better make them. Like there's no feasible reason not to now. Like
they made too much money. There's no way that they're not going to.
Oh yeah, because I mean, like, what if? Because if they just expected to make their money back, they've already made that for the next two.
Yeah.
Already, because like let's say that they don't change anything about budget or anything. They keep it pretty tight.
No, Blumhouse.
And each one costs them $25 million.
Blumhouse has got a good way about they say, here's our budget, stick to this, and make a great movie with what we have here. Don't blow it out into 100. Like, that's where they're going to screw themselves if they're like, we're going to spend it. But I don't think they will. If they stick with Blumhouse and how that they make a movie, and same with A24, they stick with the tried and true and work within that constraint and make the best possible thing there.
Perfect. Well, do you have any final last statements or anything you want to do?
No. Go see the movie. Check it out for yourself. Watch it and leave some comments. Like, we want to hear your opinion on this. We have, we got the old Gen Xer coming in telling you how your movie should be. And how he liked it, but you might not. So we definitely want to hear from you guys what you thought about it.
Yeah, you can give us your objectively wrong take how it was bad below.
Yes.
I'll
and go see Willy's Wonderlands and compare the two because they are different, but also very much the same and a lot of fun. So
Nick gets his wings every time somebody watches.
Yeah, I don't know why.
Wonderland.
Shilling for Nick Cage all of a sudden.
You gotta give it to the boy.
Yeah, true.
Well, yeah, make sure you comment, subscribe, do all the good things. We appreciate you being around for this combative conversation about FNAF. Make sure you check out the other episodes. We talk about Transformers and Beast Wars, the vastly better property in the other episodes. And that project's going to be picked up real soon. We're going to keep doing that. And we play through video games on the channel in the Posa series. Nick's playing through Blasphemous right now. That's a great playthrough that you need to check out. We might even be recording more of that later. Who knows? But we appreciate you hanging around, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Later.